Sometimes life gives us second chances in the most unexpected ways. If you've ever faced a moment that changed everything, hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories that touch the heart and remind us what truly matters in life. Mark stood frozen in the doorway of his apartment, the grocery bag slipping from his fingers and hitting the floor with a thud. Emma's words hung in the air between them, impossible and life-altering. His 5-year-old daughter Lily was at her grandmother's for the weekend, blissfully unaware that her father's world had just been turned upside down. "You're pregnant," he repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. The question that followed came from a place of fear, of the life he'd carefully rebuilt after his wife's death 3 years ago. "Is it mine?" Emma's eyes, usually warm and inviting, hardened slightly at the question. She placed a protective hand over her still flat stomach, took a deep breath, and gave him an answer that stopped him cold. "No, Mark. It's ours." The simplicity of her response cut through his panic. Not his burden to bear alone. Not a mistake or an accident. Ours. A shared responsibility, a shared joy, a shared future, if he was brave enough to accept it. Mark had met Emma at Lily's preschool 8 months ago. She was the new art teacher with paint-splattered overalls and a smile that made the room brighter. He'd been struggling as a single father, working remotely as a software engineer while trying to give Lily the stability she needed after losing her mother. Dating wasn't even on his radar until Emma somehow slipped past his defenses. Their relationship had developed slowly, cautiously. Emma understood his hesitation, his fear of letting someone new into their fragile family unit. She never pushed, never demanded more than he could give. She'd become Lily's favorite person, the one who taught her how to mix colors and see beauty in unexpected places. And somewhere along the way, she'd become his favorite person too. But a baby? That wasn't part of the plan. "I know this isn't what we expected," Emma said, her voice breaking the heavy silence. "I know you're scared. I am too. But I also know that I love you, and I love Lily, and I already love this baby." Mark sank onto the couch, his mind racing. Another child. More responsibility. More potential for heartbreak. When Sarah had died suddenly from an aneurysm, leaving him alone with their 2-year-old daughter, he'd sworn he would never put himself in a position to lose someone like that again. The pain had been too immense, too consuming. "I need some time," he said finally, not meeting her eyes. "This is a lot." Emma nodded, gathering her purse. "I understand. Take all the time you need." "But Mark? I'm not going anywhere." The door closed softly behind her, and Mark was left alone with his thoughts and fears. The next morning, he picked up Lily from his mother's house. Her pigtails bounced as she ran to him, chattering excitedly about the cookies she'd helped bake and the movie they'd watched. His mother gave him a concerned look. She always could tell when something was bothering him, but he shook his head slightly. "Not now." "Daddy, when are we seeing Miss Emma again?" Lily asked as they drove home. "She promised to show me how to make a rainbow with just 3 colors." Mark gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Soon, sweetheart. Miss Emma she's busy right now." "Is she making art?" "She says sometimes artists need quiet time to hear their ideas." "Something like that," Mark murmured. That night, after tucking Lily into bed, Mark found himself looking through old photos. Sarah holding newborn Lily in the hospital. Their first Christmas as a family. The last vacation they took together before Sarah's headaches started. The memories were still painful, but somehow the edges had softened over time. He came across a recent picture, Emma and Lily at the park, their heads bent together over a sketchbook, sunlight catching in both their hair. Emma had never tried to replace Sarah in Lily's life. She'd simply created her own space, bringing color and laughter back into their home in a way he hadn't thought possible. Mark picked up his phone and stared at it for a long moment before typing a message, "Can we talk tomorrow?" Emma's response came quickly, "I'll be here." The next day, after dropping Lily at school, Mark drove to Emma's small apartment. She opened the door wearing one of his old sweatshirts, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked tired, vulnerable, and so beautiful it made his chest ache. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. "My first reaction wasn't fair to you." Emma shook her head. "You were shocked. I was too when I found out." They sat at her kitchen table, mugs of tea growing cold between them as Mark struggled to find the right words. "When Sarah died, I thought that was it for me. I never expected to find someone else, never wanted to risk loving that deeply again. And then you came along with your paint-stained fingers and your terrible jokes, and suddenly Lily was laughing again. I was laughing again." Emma reached across the table and took his hand. "I know I can never replace what you lost." "That's just it," Mark said, squeezing her fingers. "You never tried to. You created something new, something different but equally beautiful. And I've been so afraid of losing that, I almost pushed it away myself." He took a deep breath. "I'm still scared, Emma. Terrified, actually. But I don't want fear to make this decision for me. For us." "What are you saying?" Emma asked, her voice barely audible. "I'm saying that I love you. And if you're willing to be patient with me while I figure out how to be brave again, I want to do this together. All of it. You, me, Lily, and..." His eyes dropped to her stomach, "Our baby." Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks as she stood and moved around the table, pulling him to his feet and into her arms. "I can be patient. And you're already braver than you know." The months that followed weren't easy. Mark had panic attacks about all the things that could go wrong. Emma had morning sickness that lasted well into the afternoon. Telling Lily about the baby brought its own challenges, confusion, excitement, and occasional jealousy all mixed together in her 5-year-old heart. But there were beautiful moments too. The first ultrasound, where they saw their baby's tiny heartbeat flickering on the screen. The evening Mark came home to find Emma and Lily painting the spare room a soft yellow. The way Lily would talk to Emma's growing belly, telling her little brother or sister about all the important things they needed to know about the world. As Emma's due date approached, Mark's anxiety increased. The memories of Sarah's pregnancy with Lily kept surfacing, the joy they'd shared, the plans they'd made, the future they'd never get to have together. One night, Emma found him sitting on the nursery floor at 3 a.m., surrounded by half-assembled furniture. "Talk to me," she said simply, lowering herself carefully to sit beside him. "What if I can't do this?" he whispered. "What if something happens to you? What if I'm not enough for 2 children?" Emma took his hand and placed it on her rounded belly, where their baby was kicking steadily. "Feel that? That's our child, already fighting to get out here and meet you. You are already enough, Mark. You've been enough for Lily all these years. You've been enough for me since the day we met." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "I can't promise nothing will happen to me. No one can promise that. But I can promise that right now, in this moment, we're here together. And that has to be enough." 2 weeks later, after 18 hours of labor, their son was born. Mark held him with trembling hands, this tiny person with Emma's nose and his chin, completely new and yet somehow familiar. "Hello, James," he whispered, using the name they'd chosen to honor Emma's father. "We've been waiting for you." That night, as Emma slept in the hospital bed with James in the bassinet beside her, Mark stepped into the hallway and called his mother, who had stayed at their apartment with Lily. "How is everyone?" she asked anxiously. "They're perfect," Mark said, his voice thick with emotion. "Mom, can you bring Lily first thing tomorrow? There's someone she needs to meet." The next morning, Mark waited nervously in the hospital lobby. When he saw Lily's familiar pigtails bouncing through the automatic doors, his heart swelled. She ran to him, full of questions and excitement. "Is the baby here? Is Emma okay? Can I see them now?" Mark knelt down to her level. Yes to all of those questions. But first, I want to tell you something important. He took her small hands in his. You know how you've been the very best thing in my life since the day you were born. Lily nodded solemnly. Well, now there's a little boy who's going to need both of us to show him how things work in this world. And Emma and I are going to need your help too. Do you think you can be a big sister? Lily considered this seriously before nodding again. I can show him how to color inside the lines. And outside them too, because Miss Emma says that's important sometimes. Mark laughed, blinking back tears. That's exactly right. When they entered Emma's hospital room, Lily approached the bed cautiously. Emma smiled tiredly and patted the space beside her. Come meet your brother, Lilybug. Mark lifted Lily onto the bed, and Emma carefully placed James in her arms, supporting his head. Lily stared down at the tiny face in wonder. He's so small, she whispered. You were this small once too, Mark told her, sitting on the edge of the bed so that all four of them were connected. Hello, James, Lily said seriously. I'm your big sister. That means I'll always look out for you, even when you're annoying. Daddy and Miss Emma will look out for both of us. Emma caught Mark's eye over Lily's head, her own eyes shining with tears. In that moment, Mark felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of completeness, of family. Later that evening, as Lily dozed in the chair beside Emma's bed and James slept peacefully in his bassinet, Emma reached for Mark's hand. What are you thinking about? She asked softly. Mark considered the question. He was thinking about Sarah, about the grief that would always be part of him. He was thinking about fear and courage and second chances. He was thinking about the family they were building, different from what he'd imagined but no less precious. I'm thinking that when you answered, "It's ours," you weren't just talking about the baby, he said finally. You were talking about all of it, the joy, the fear, the responsibility, the love. All of it, ours to share. Emma squeezed his hand. That's exactly what I meant. As Mark looked around the room at his sleeping daughter, his newborn son, and the remarkable woman who had helped him find his way back to hope, he realized that sometimes the most unexpected turns in life lead us exactly where we need to be. Life doesn't always give us what we planned for, but sometimes it gives us what we need, if we're brave enough to accept it.